It's just not worth doing it under those circumstances. Why would you? It's almost as if you're losing money.
Hey guys, doing all right?
You know, sometimes you really have to wonder, is it even worth it? Is doing probate really worth it? Now, let me explain exactly what we're talking about here. When we do good estate planning, we're doing revocable living trusts. We work with our clients. We advise them on making sure everything stays in the trust. We try to have annual meetings with them. And one of the topics is always, all right, is everything in the trust or the beneficiary designation set up exactly the right way to try to avoid probate? Largely, the clients that do come in every year, they stay on top of it. They're largely successful. But it's not very common for it to be 100% successful in things staying out of probate. Now, let me just go through some of those situations. There are things that we can't necessarily do anything about. And then there are things that just aren't worth it. So if you end up having the unmitigated nerve to file your taxes and then die before you get your refund, all right, that check is going to be made out to your estate. That means probate. All right, so what's the size of that check? That's where we could have a discussion on whether or not probate is worth it. Okay, so this is George. George is a member of our team. He's parked in the conference room. He doesn't say a lot, but he kind of adds to the ambiance. Now, since this is a video on is it worth it, I think it's worth having George here. So what I'd like to ask you then is, please go ahead and comment below. What are some things that you don't think are worth it? Doesn't have to be legal or financial or related to anything that we're talking about, but just what are some things that you don't think are worth it? All right, so what exactly are the steps for a small estate probate in North Carolina? And again, your jurisdiction might be a little bit different. Things might be easier, might be tougher. The threshold might be different. But there are things that are needed to do probate for a small estate in North Carolina. And there's actually a packet. We're going to put a link to that in the description below. But let me just kind of go through exactly what these forms are. You have to fill out the affidavit for collection of personal property of the decedent. Form AOCE-203B. All the beneficiaries and heirs must be listed on the form with full names and addresses. If you're not a North Carolina resident, you have to fill out a resident process agent form appointing a resident process agent so that there's a point of contact for court service. In other words, if the estate gets sued, there has to be a person with a physical address in North Carolina. And you got to sign that form in front of a notary. The court fee to start the process is $120. You have to complete an estate tax certification form if the death is prior to January 1st, 2013. You have to complete the family history affidavit. So someone kind of they have to swear under oath or affirm under oath, hey, here's the family history, the family dynamics, who's related to who. And then if there's a will, you have to have the original of the will, the death certificate, and the affidavit of collection of disbursement and distribution. That's kind of the final thing you file when you're ready to close the estate. So that's all of the different kind of steps to qualify to send in and handle this probate. Now, I kind of estimate this to be around 20 hours of work for people who really aren't familiar with how this works. And look, this is going to vary greatly. This is if maybe there's 1 to 3 or 4 items, 20 hours of work. You end up with 7 or 8 items. Okay, now it's suddenly going to be more work and running around that has to be done. And some people are just more attuned to this type of work and get it done more quickly. So, but really, you should kind of count on 20 hours of work to be put into a small estate. And we're going to talk about calculations in a minute. All right, just a story about is something worth it? A friend of mine, he said, I have to run an errand. Do you want to come with me? And it was to return something to a store. And the item was maybe $6.50. The store was probably about 45 minutes away. So that's 45 minutes each direction. That's an hour and a half of time. And then there's gas involved. It was traffic and everything. This was probably going to be about a little under 2 hours round trip. Plus, knowing the way traffic was, it was probably going to eat up about $1.50 in gas. And I really had to say, look, is this really worth it to return this item if it's something that you can just keep, or wait until there's, maybe there's something else that has to be returned or you have to go into that area before. But making a separate trip, killing 2 hours of a day to return an item that was roughly $6 and eating up about $1.50 gas, I just really had to say, is it worth it? I didn't think it was worth it. He did. He was actually gone for 2.5 hours because traffic was even worse. All right, so really, what's the best way to think about, is this actually worth it? Numbers. You always look at the numbers, you do the math, and see if it works out for you. So I had a client, I actually did a revocable trust for her, and then we did one for her mother, and mom passed on, and both of them are very good about making sure everything was in the trust, except mom had one bank account that was not inside the trust. It was a savings account, did not have a pay on death beneficiary designation. It's like, okay, it's got to be probate. All right, so sat down, what's the balance in that account? And I remember this because it was actually an even amount, $212. Let's do the math on that. $212, $120 filing fee to do this, $92 left over. Divide that by 20. That comes out to $4.60 an hour. And I asked, is that really worth doing it? So it's like, no, it's not worth it. If you want to do 20 hours of work, it comes out to $4.60 an hour. Go ahead, but it's not worth hiring an attorney to do that. Definitely not. It's just not worth doing it under those circumstances. Why would you? It's almost as if you're losing money. That's kind of the cost benefit analysis. Now let's use another example. A car with a Kelley Blue Book value of $6,500. Okay, that's still under the $20,000 limit. It's one item. Okay, that is probably worth it. I have to leave the determination up to the client, but for me, yeah, that's worth doing the paperwork and getting that done. All right, so this also brings up an interesting point for the business owners out there. This same kind of cost-benefit analysis is something that I learned quite a while ago when you're trying to determine, is it worth having someone else, a contractor or an employee, handle something for you rather than you doing it yourself. Now, the analysis was, okay, determine how much you want to make. Have a realistic number of hours per week, a realistic number of weeks, so we're kind of factoring in holidays. So you divide the money that you want to have coming in, divide that by the number of hours you're going to be working during that year, and now that gives you a dollar per hour figure. And the theory is, look, if it's going to cost you your time to do a task that you can hire somebody at a lower rate for what needs to be done, that's a no-brainer. You have them handle those tasks for the lower dollar per hour rate. So it really is just kind of a cost-benefit analysis. So that works in business, but it's also now working and using that kind of thinking in whether or not probate is actually worth doing. All right, so what happens with the check or the bank account if you determine it's not worth it? Just walk away. My client told me at the bank for that $212, I said, look, just tell them they can keep it. She went down, she told them, look, you can keep it. And they looked at her real funny. It's like, no, this is the only asset. This is the only thing that would have to go through probate. And they go, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. We'll just let it sit there and eventually it'll just go away. And that made sense in that circumstance. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this information on whether or not probate is worth your time. If you could, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and then also comment below that you subscribed, and we will do our best to get back to you and reply to your comment. As always, please stay safe, plan ahead, and enjoy life. And whatever you do, make it a great day. Right, George? Absolutely.